explaining that many of his followers had requested he try this specific product. Still, he mentions that food reviews aren't the main focus of his channel, but he ends up eating a lot on camera anyway. The man then asks if the store offers delivery, as he'd like to try their other products as well. Chan explains that they only use an app for deliveries. The man admits he doesn't know how to use apps like that, which Chan finds a bit strange, so he asks him how he manages to do his live streams. The older man replies that he just has to press a single button to start broadcasting, and his son takes care of editing the videos later. Delivery apps, in his opinion, are just far too complicated. Chan assures him it's not so difficult and begins explaining it. Step by step first, add the items to the cart, then just hit the purchase button. After that, you just choose the address and the payment method. There are a few different options, so you just select one and confirm. But the old man looks completely overwhelmed. Seeing his confusion, Chan kindly asks if he could take a look at his phone. He takes the device and walks him through it personally, showing him which buttons to press, where to type his information, and how to fill in his card details. The older man remarks that it's an awful lot of steps. While helping him, Chan starts thinking that he's been in a lot of similar situations lately, always solving problems for other people. His manager had already told him he shouldn't keep taking everything on himself, but since the store wasn't busy at the moment, he figured it was fine. The old man thanks him profusely, saying he's very kind for going out of his way to help. The man then takes a close look at Chan's face and declares that he's destined to have great fortune in life. He says Chan has a knack for attracting good people and possesses exceptional luck. A bit surprised, Chan asks how he could possibly know that. The old man explains that he's been studying physiognomy as a hobby for years and is quite good at it. He even once predicted the exact birth date of a friend's grandson. He warns that things might be a little difficult until the end of the year, and then asks if Chan has any plans for his future. Chan replies that he's still trying to figure out what to do next. The old man tells him not to worry and to just keep moving forward. He reminds Chan that he's already been through so much, and in the end, everything has always worked out for the best. Chan admits that's true in a way. The man continues saying that while much greater things await him in the future, there will be moments when he won't be able to get through it all alone. But he assures him that no matter what, he will always have someone by his side. Just then, Chan says the order has been placed and that he can now choose anything he'd like from the app. The older gentleman asks if he can really order any product, and Chan cheerfully confirms that he can. The man thanks him again and decides to leave a tip for his help, offering a surprisingly generous amount. Chan tries to refuse, but the old man insists he accept the gift from an elderly gentleman he helped out. He thanks him once more and leaves. When the manager returns, she asks if he really received $500,000 as a tip. Chan confirms and says he tried to give it back, but the man just left the money and walked away. He asks if he should treat it as lost property. The manager says he can, but asks if he doesn't want to keep it. Chan thinks it's way too much since he only helped with something simple and doesn't urgently need the cash. The manager teases that he gets embarrassed far too easily. Chan says that isn't it. He just feels as if he's being guided towards something bigger. The manager laughs and says since he refused the money so quickly, she'll keep it in the safe for 1 month. After that time is up, she asks what he'll do. Chan says he might just invite her to dinner. The manager finds that interesting and asks if he would really do that. She then remembers the job from the pharmaceutical company and asks if he accepted it. Chan says yes. He'd spoken with them the night before and scheduled a meeting with the client at the store the next evening as the client insisted on explaining everything in person. Chan apologizes for deciding to use the store as the meeting place, but the manager tells him it's no problem at all. She even jokes that he can take off his uniform during the conversation if he wants. She asks for the company's name and Chan replies that it's called Immer. The manager notes it's just a few bus stops away, so not far at all. She starts talking about the people who work there and suddenly notices something odd, saying that it all feels like a huge coincidence. Later that day, Chan is standing out in front of the store waiting. A customer asks if the messenger has arrived yet, and he answers that she hasn't. He asks what she looks like, and the customer says he'll recognize her immediately because she's a succubus with pink hair. It's the very same one who appeared before. She comments that it's been quite a while since they last saw each other. Chan was serving a drink when she asked if he remembered her. He gave a small smile and replied that it would be impossible to forget. After all, she was the customer who had thrown up rainbows all over the store floor. While continuing to prepare the drink, he commented that he never would have imagined seeing her here and asked how she'd been. She gets a slightly pouty expression, clearly embarrassed by the memory. Chan tells her it's fine, and that he won't bring up the vomiting again. The succubus asks him not to mention it at all, saying she's already swamped with work, buried in paperwork and responsibilities. She adds that she never imagined Chan was a magic specialist, and that she'd heard the competition to get a certificate was intense. Chan explains that her surprise is understandable. She couldn't have known about that side of him since he only got his certificate less than a week ago, and this is actually his first official assignment. He remarks that she might feel a little uneasy since he's still a complete novice. The succubus replies that it's not a problem at all and tells him not to worry because she'll explain everything and make it easy to understand. She then begins to present the magical drug the company has been developing. She explains that many couples argue because of a lack of honesty, and so the company is creating a mutual honesty potion to resolve that kind of conflict. Chan questions whether a potion shouldn't be for making people fall in love, but the succubus clarifies that you can't create love where it doesn't exist, and besides, doing so would be against the law. For that very reason, the company developed potions to strengthen relationships where love already exists, as well as formulas focused on mutual understanding and empathy. Chan asks if it's basically a truth serum. The succubus says she expected that comparison, but explains that their potion is different. She states that a truth serum doesn't make someone speak with genuine honesty. It merely tricks a person into speaking as if it were natural. And under its influence, certain statements can't be considered fully true because the person's cognitive function is impaired. It's precisely because of this difference that the company was able to obtain magical approval. In addition, the potion requires both partners to drink it together. Still, Chan observes that it could be seen as a type of truth serum. The succubus then asks him to imagine a situation where both partners took the potion and someone asked, for instance, if speaking honestly would allow them to leave. In that case, since neither of them could lie, the other person's emotional resistance would just get stronger, reducing the potion's effectiveness for interrogations. She stressed that they'd made this point crystal clear in the rebuttal documents, even adding several safeguards to get the official go-ahead. The very reason they sought out Chan was to fix any potential flaws in those safeguards. The current discussions were about defining just how honest a couple should be, and whether they ought to be completely transparent about everything in a romantic relationship. The succubus conceded that too much honesty could actually lead to couples breaking up, and Chan agreed with her. She explained that, to prevent that, they had added supplements to align a person's thoughts with the specific topic of conversation, which would prevent any negative side effects. Chan figured that, in short, they wanted to anticipate and prevent any problems with the potion before they even started. Even though he understood the theory, he felt he needed to see the potion with his own eyes and asked if he could analyze it. The succubus said yes, of course. However, she quickly explained that the formula was still in phase 1, so they didn't know for sure what might happen if someone actually drank it. Chan guessed she was worried because she didn't know that he possessed a high resistance to magic. So he asked if she had any magical items in her bag. She pulled out a perfume that promised to make anyone noticeable and attractive within a 10-foot radius. Chan asked if he could use a little and discreetly applied his anti-magic to neutralize the effect before spraying it on himself. He then asked if she felt any attraction to him. The succubus replied, "Not particularly." He silently concluded that his anti-magic had worked perfectly. She thought it was strange, since the perfume had excellent reviews, and wondered if it meant he had no charm whatsoever, suggesting that maybe that's why the product didn't work. Chan felt a bit offended, and explained that he had canceled the effect with his ability, making it clear he was quite skilled in that area. He admitted that he could see why she'd misunderstand. But the succubus quickly apologized, saying she didn't mean it like that, and insisted that he was indeed charming. If he hadn't deactivated the effect, she probably would have felt very attracted to him. Internally, Chan thought that her trying to fix it only made the situation more awkward. After demonstrating his abilities, he said she could bring him the potion. The succubus explained that it was part of an external shipment and they would need to sign a specific authorization in the contract to release the item, which could take 1 to 2 days. She also mentioned that since it was just a convenience store, she herself might not be the one in charge of the next step in the process. Chan told her he didn't want to switch representatives and that he would prefer to work with her. He wanted the succubus to be his contact at the company because he felt a connection with her and because she was great at explaining everything. He really wanted to continue working with her. The succubus replied that of course that would be fine. Later, as the succubus was leaving, Chan was chatting with the store manager. The manager asked what the succubus had said, and Chan told her that she had seriously asked if there was any hidden treasure in the store. The manager remarked that she seemed like a very interesting person and asked if Chan was planning to get the potion from the next shipment and test it himself. Chan confirmed that he was saying it shouldn't be a problem thanks to his special constitution. Still, he wondered if he might experience any side effects. The manager figured probably not, since if the effects were severe, the company wouldn't have requested tests at such an early stage. The real question was who he would take the potion with, since it was a formula that made 2 people more honest and open with each other. For it to work correctly, it needed to be someone he had some sort of affection for, and the effect could only be verified if another person took the potion as well. Chan suggested that he could just take it alone and talk to his own subconscious, or maybe the manager could take it with him. She immediately shot that idea down. Then the manager suggested that he talk to the succubus because even if it was a professional request, it was still something significant. In her opinion, the succubus was the best option he had. Chan agreed that he would talk to her about it. Meanwhile, the succubus was replaying the moment when Chan said he would love to continue working with her. Just remembering it made her blush, and she started to wonder why her heart had pounded like that. The next morning, a customer was leaving the store, and Chan noticed there were a lot of families there that day. He figured it was either because it was Saturday or because May was considered the month of family. Sure enough, there were many parents and children walking about. He then saw a child throwing a tantrum because he wanted candy. The mother, trying to handle the situation, said that if her son kept crying, a dragon would show up and take him away. She threatened to tell the dragon up in the sky to come down and get him. The child kept screaming right up until someone else entered the store. The newcomer was a dragon, Hana. Chan asked how she was doing. Hana replied that she was fine, but then questioned what this whole story was about, dragons taking children away. She asked the woman what on earth she meant. and where exactly these dragons were supposed to be taking children. Chan found himself wondering about that too, since he'd never really thought about the kinds of threats adults use. The child was clearly terrified at the sight of Hana. Chan just said he wasn't sure where dragons might take someone, and politely asked the woman if she needed anything else. She replied that she was all done with her shopping and headed out, mentioning she'd get the candy for her son elsewhere. After she left, Chan asked Hana again how she was doing. She told him she'd stayed over at her mom's house. He asked if that meant she wasn't going to school anymore. Hana explained that the pollen had hit her school pretty hard too, so classes were canceled for the time being. Chan remembered the incident and figured that made sense. He then asked how things were with her friends and if she'd been able to talk to any of them. Hana said she had explaining. She'd met up with her friends at a cafe, but thought they were acting a little strange. She told him she suggested they play house with her, being the mom. But whenever she asked for something, the other kids would hand it over with this incredible reverence, almost like they were scared of her. Even when she used a playful voice, they took everything she said super seriously. It dawned on Chan that the kids were treating Hana like a queen, or worse, like someone to be feared. She asked if she'd done something wrong, but he quickly reassured her, of course not. That's when it finally clicked for him. The children were afraid of dragons, so Hana's presence, as gentle as she was naturally intimidating. Their fear was making the magic around them turn darker and heavier, all because they were so anxious. The incident at the store just made everything even clearer to Chan. In the popular imagination, dragons were these huge, terrifying monsters that ate children, basically their world's version of the boogeyman. The only difference was dragons weren't make-believe. They were real and lived right alongside everyone else. And yet they were still used as a scary story to keep kids in line. While he was mulling this over, Hana pointed to the door and said there was a dog outside. It was Puppy, desperately scratching at the door to be let in. The little guy looked filthy and worn out. The moment he got inside, Chan asked what happened, if he'd been rolling around in something, and why he looked so rough. But instead of answering like he usually would, Puppy just started barking. Chan kept asking what was wrong until it hit him that Hana's presence might be the issue. He crouched down and quietly asked Puppy if he wasn't talking because of her. Puppy confirmed it, admitting he didn't want to talk in front of her. Puppy started to explain that the pollen had finally been cleared out, so he'd gone back to the park. But that morning, something totally unexpected happened. A bunch of people had shown up at the park to handle some problem that had popped up. And right in the middle of all the commotion, someone stepped on his tail. Instead of yelping like a normal dog, he reacted by shouting, "Ouch," just like a person. He didn't even realize what he'd done at the moment, but everyone heard it. From that moment on, it was pure chaos. People started freaking out and trying to catch him, and Puppy spent the next 2 hours on the run. He only managed to get away by hiding behind a vending machine until things quieted down. Chan listened to the whole story and thought that Puppy was having a seriously unbelievable streak of bad luck. Puppy asked if he had any idea what could be causing all this. But Chan admitted he had no clue and said it was probably best for Puppy to lay low at the store for now. Even so, Puppy was still on edge. He said he might be able to talk in front of Hana, but he had no idea how she'd react. After that morning's scare, he didn't want to talk to anyone but Chan and the store manager. He promised to be way more careful from now on. Just then, Hana came over and asked what he was whispering to the dog about. Chan asked if she wanted in on the conversation, but Puppy let out a little complaining bark. Chan then explained to him that if something like that happened again, when neither of them was around, Puppy would need to know how to handle it himself. If he didn't want to live in hiding forever, he'd have to start building connections and making some friends. He added that Hana was an exceptionally kind and pure-hearted girl, and that she could definitely be trusted with a secret. Hana promised she would, even without knowing what the secret was about. Chan reminded Puppy that he'd trusted the manager before, so he could definitely trust someone again. After a moment of hesitation, Puppy finally agreed, saying that if Chan trusted her, he would too. When Hana heard the dog speak so clearly, she was surprised, but reacted with a kind of quiet excitement. Puppy quickly asked her not to be too loud. Hana promised it would be their little secret. Chan watched them and thought thankfully it looked like the two of them were going to get along just fine. He even wondered if it was because they were both incredibly cute, but then got confused by his own train of thought. He then asked Hana if she was able to see the colors around people again. She explained that after he'd applied the anti-addict to her, the effect only lasted for 24 hours before it wore off. Chan said he could just apply it again, but Hana pointed out that she wasn't going to kindergarten that day. He replied that it didn't matter, because the weather was great. Then he called over Puppy and asked for his help. When Puppy asked what, Chan replied that it was something simple, learning how to make friends. Later on, the store got even busier as families came and went. Chan asked if Puppy understood the plan, and he confirmed he did. When another family came in, a father with his son, Chan sized up the situation and decided the boy would be the perfect target. The kid seemed to have a strong personality, which made him a little unsure if it would work. But since he looked to be the same age as Hana, it was worth a shot. The father asked Chan to keep an eye on the boy while he shopped, promising to pay for anything his son picked out. Chan calmly agreed, thinking to himself that it was time to set the plan in motion. Puppy slowly trotted over and gave a cute little bark, trying to get the boy's attention. Chan thought it was working and that a conversation would start up naturally. However, when the boy came closer, his reaction was completely unexpected. He called the dog disgusting, said he'd never seen such a dirty animal, and demanded to know why a dog like that was inside the store. Even Chan was taken aback by his reaction. The boy then demanded they get the dog out of there immediately. That's when Hana stepped forward, declaring that the puppy was theirs and that he was clean and very cute. She firmly stated that the boy needed to apologize right now. With everything having gone so wrong, Chan decided to recap what his plan was supposed to have been. Step 1 was to select a child to be the target of the operation. Step 2 was to grab the child's attention by deploying the puppy's maximum cuteness. Step 3 was to use that same cuteness to melt the hearts of both the child and their parents. In Step 4, Hana would come over, holding the puppy, say hello, and make a good impression. And in Step 5, the kids would be much more open to chatting. That way, Hana could finally make a friend. But reality turned out to be very different from what he had imagined. Chan already knew that life doesn't always go according to plan. Puppy didn't take what happened well at all, and Hana was furious too. Seeing this, Chan figured it was time to call off the operation and make a strategic retreat. He decided to buy juice for both of them, suggesting they could all talk calmly while trying the store's new cookies. He asked the fox boy to come over to the table to avoid any more trouble. What Chan didn't expect, however, was that the boy was completely smitten. The boy started complimenting her, saying she was beautiful, really beautiful. Chan was confused, trying to figure out what he was going on about. But when Hana apologized to Puppy and gave him a hug, the boy felt a pang in his heart. He started to see her as something like an angel. He said she was kind and beautiful, and that he had never seen a dragon like her. Still, Chan suggested that if the boy liked her so much, maybe he could apologize for what he'd said earlier. The boy replied that he had no reason to apologize because the dog was truly ugly and dirty. Hana got annoyed and told him not to talk like that about the uncle who takes care of her, insisting that Puppy was clean and cute. The boy then proposed a bet they'd have 1 minute to build a tower with the store's cookies, and whoever built the tallest one would win. He made it clear that since Hana didn't really know the game, he was sure to win. Hana shot back that she would be the one to win and declared that Chan would be the judge. Chan thought to himself that in a way the operation was working just not at all how he'd planned it. He set the timer for 1 minute and laid out the rules. Whoever built the tallest tower in that time would win, and the loser would have to apologize. When they started, Hana was fast but didn't have much skill. In just 24 seconds, the boy had already built an impressive tower. Hana's, on the other hand, was very short, and when she realized she was losing, she started to cry. Chan realized he had underestimated the situation and that she was truly upset. At that moment, another customer came in with his daughter. The girl started throwing a tantrum on the floor, and her father tried to scare her by saying he would call a dragon to take her away. Chan went over and politely asked the man to lower his voice so he wouldn't disturb the other customers, especially when talking about dragons. When the man noticed Hana, he quickly apologized, saying he hadn't seen her there. Hana declared that she would never take anyone away. The fox boy then commented that dragons take children to a playground in the sky because they want to play with them. Hana became confused and asked if that was really true. The boy explained that it was just something his father used to say, but Hana recalled hearing that dragons only took naughty children who didn't listen to their parents. The boy got embarrassed and admitted he might have been confused. When the boy's father finally came back, Chan smoothed things over by offering everyone some juice. When called by his father, the boy invited Hana to join them at the amusement park, mentioning it would be boring to ride the roller coaster alone and suggesting they could go together. Chan realized the boy who'd seemed so arrogant earlier was now practically asking Hana out on a date. At this rate, he was definitely boyfriend material, but Hana turned him down, explaining she had only come to the store that day to see her uncle. The boy was clearly annoyed by her answer. Chan started to feel guilty, wondering if he was getting in the way and causing Hana to miss out on good opportunities. Even so, before leaving, the boy asked for her phone number, insisting they go to the park together next time and promising to text her every day. After he left, they resumed Operation Find Hana, a friend. The first kid seemed to enjoy talking to Puppy, but the father wouldn't let them touch him, worried they'd get their hands dirty. The second child was completely uninterested. This kind of thing happened a few more times. In the end, they decided to call off the operation because Puppy was starting to get his feelings hurt. He knew he wasn't the most incredible dog in the world, but he never imagined he'd be treated like that. Chan apologized, admitting that he'd completely misjudged the situation. He offered Puppy 30,000 won as payment for taking part in the operation. Puppy replied that he'd helped for Hana's sake, not for the money. Still, Chan insisted on sticking to the store's rule, saying that nothing in the store was free and that anyone who works there has to be paid. Chan suggested that if Puppy didn't want to carry cash, he could just eat dog food from the store as payment instead. Puppy replied that he would gladly accept the offer. A little later, Hana asked if he wanted to come over to her house to play. She explained that she really wanted to hang out with him, telling him her house was big and full of toys, and that they could eat tasty snacks and play games together. Puppy warmly thanked her for the invitation. Visibly pleased, Chan thought that at least they'd managed to make one friend that day after all. Later, during the night shift, the manager started explaining that many adults still tell certain stories that stem from the ancient wars between the races. Dragons, she said, played a massive role in those conflicts. However, anyone who had actually witnessed the dragon's power firsthand was either no longer alive or incredibly old. According to the manager, those stories were likely passed down from generation to generation as a warning to make sure no one would mess with dragons. Over time, the tales got twisted and eventually just became stories meant to scare children. She added that dragons themselves are indifferent to that sort of thing, so they rarely ever bring it up. Once people grow up, those stories start to seem pretty meaningless. And since real dragons became part of society, their image has softened, and adults aren't nearly as afraid of them anymore. The manager then asked what exactly Chan was trying to accomplish by helping the little dragon girl. She said she was genuinely curious, since it looked like he had gone to a lot of trouble that day, and asked if there was a special reason for it. Chan explained that it reminded him a bit of his own childhood, confessing that he didn't have any friends when he was a kid. His family had always been very poor, and he was bullied for it. He tried talking to his teacher, but it didn't change anything. In the end, he'd just go home crying and ask his mom why he always had to wear shoes with holes in them. That's why he thought he might be able to help Hana. He believed that an adult who had gone through something similar could offer a unique perspective and genuinely make a difference. The manager remarked that he wanted to be a good adult. She noted that most people just offer comforting words, but he had actually tried to take action and improve the little dragon girl's situation, as if he didn't want her to feel the same pain he once did. In her eyes, people who help others with that kind of motivation are truly great adults. And that, she explained, was why she considered Chan a great person. Chan commented that her words were touching, but the look on her face was a little terrifying. That's when she explained that someone had been illegally dumping their trash right in front of the store. Chan asked how long it had been there, and the manager replied that it showed up around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She had just stepped away to use the restroom, and when she got back, the trash was already sitting by the door. He offered to clean it up, but she told him not to touch it. She reasoned that if they cleaned it, whoever was responsible might think it was okay and just keep dumping more trash there. She said she was 200% sure that if they removed it, more would just show up in its place. The manager told Chan to call the police if he spotted anyone illegally dumping trash by the door. She also suggested keeping the door closed at night except for customers to keep the dust out. Chan asked if it was like the pollen problem they had before, but the manager told him this was different. Turns out there was some construction down the street kicking up a ton of dust. The construction crew had been stopping by on their breaks to load up on beer. Chan thought drinking on the job was a little odd, but he noticed the nearby police officer didn't seem to mind. That's when he realized it was Officer Aru. He remembered it had been a while since he'd last seen her, not since that whole illegal wallet fiasco. He also couldn't help but notice her hair color was completely different. Chan started getting a little flustered as Aru walked up to the store. She called him out for staring and asked if something was wrong. He quickly explained he was just surprised and happy to see her after such a long time. Aru told him not to hesitate to ask if he had any questions about the construction on the street. Chan thought about the usual rowdy elves he saw around, and compared to them, Aru was like a calm, collected angel. Deciding not to hold her up, he thanked her for the offer and let her get back to her duties. As she walked back to her post, Sean mused that he'd worked at a lot of convenience stores, but this was the first one with a police officer patrolling right outside. It definitely made him feel a whole lot safer. A moment later, another customer came in asking for some cigarettes. Then out of the blue, a customer asked if anyone had turned in some lost property. He was specifically asking if a bag of money or something similar was in the lost and found. Chan found this pretty weird and asked him what he meant by a bag of money. The lizard man explained that he'd heard a rumor someone lost a bag there, one that was obviously stuffed with cash. Completely baffled, Chan went to check the lost and found box, just in case. Just as he thought there was no bag, he couldn't help but find it strange that someone would lose a bag of money and then send a stranger to come look for it. He figured that if you're carrying around a bag full of cash, you'd probably be a little more careful not to lose it. About 10 minutes later, a bunch of other people started showing up, all asking about the same bag. One guy claimed he was the one who lost it. Another said it was his friend's. A third person insisted his son had left a bag full of cash in the store. The whole situation was getting stranger by the minute. Chan decided to call his manager to ask her what was going on. She told him to call the police right away, saying this was way beyond their pay grade. She suggested he stay on the line with her for safety until the police arrived. But when Chan glanced outside and saw Aru, he realized an officer was already on the scene and told his manager a call wouldn't be necessary. A little later, Aru was writing everything down in her report. Between 11 o'clock and 12:30 at night, 4 different customers had come in asking about the same bag of money. The thing was, no such item had been logged as lost, and nobody had filed an official report. Chan told her he knew it sounded crazy, but it was all true. He even offered to show her the empty lost and found box. Aru replied that she believed him completely. In fact, she said she already had a hunch about what was going on, but needed to confirm it. With that, she took off her bright traffic guard uniform and said she was going to observe from inside the store. She told Chan to just act natural and keep working, feeling certain that more people would show up looking for this supposed bag. She'd just hang out in a corner and pretend to be another customer. While Aru watched discreetly from the corner, Chan couldn't stop wondering who the bag belonged to. If it was real, why wasn't the actual owner coming to get it themselves? Sure enough, an elderly woman came in shortly after demanding the bag of money. She ordered him to hand it over right away, claiming her friend had lost it. Chan politely explained that nothing had been turned in that day. The woman immediately accused him of lying and hinted that he was just trying to keep the money for himself. She then went on a tirade about how irrational humans are and demanded he stop lying. Chan stood his ground and repeated that there was no such bag in the store. He added that, even if there were, he couldn't just give it to a stranger. He warned her that if she kept causing a scene, he'd have to ask her to leave. Just then, Aru stepped forward and cited Article 1 of the International Interracial Constitution, which guarantees equality among all races in every part of life and strictly prohibits any form of discrimination. She pointed out that the woman's comment was clearly discriminatory and could result in legal action. The old woman was absolutely stunned. Aru then asked if she'd like to head down to the police station to clear things up. Faced with that ultimatum, the woman instantly dropped the act about the bag and scurried out of the store. Chan thanked her for her help, but wondered if they had enough evidence or if they should have waited for more people. Aru told him it wasn't necessary. "You did great," she said, explaining that she had already gotten everything she needed from that encounter. Chan's story lined up perfectly with how that woman and the other customers had acted. They all showed up saying they'd lost a bag of money and were there to get it back. It was starting to look like a classic black market scheme. She explained that the black market deals in all sorts of illegal items like modified magical tools, false identities, and other shady objects. It reminded her of that previous case with the illegally modified wallet that turned up in the store. The owner of that wallet even admitted he got it from the black market and ended up turning himself in at the police station. She also explained that the black market operates both online and offline. They have these shady websites where criminals recruit everyday people by offering what look like simple part-time jobs. In reality, these jobs are just a front to help with illegal transactions and move black market goods on the down low. According to Airwell, the ads the black market used were deceptively simple. They'd post something innocent sounding like, "Looking for someone to pick up my bag of money." Most of the folks who fell for it were just regular citizens with clean records and no criminal history. So in other words, all the people who came to the store asking about the bag were likely just part-timers hired by the black market. Still, she asked one more time if Chan was absolutely positive there wasn't a bag anywhere in the store. He confirmed he was sure. That's when it hit him, the trash bag that had been sitting in front of the store since 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe it wasn't just trash. What if it was the bag, but in disguise? When Errol went to check it out, she mentioned that it looked like a normal bag of garbage at first glance. She asked how long it had been sitting there. Chan explained it had been there since 3, and that the manager told him not to touch it, so he just left it alone. Taking a closer look, Chan finally noticed a strange aura around the bag. If he'd paid more attention when the manager brought it up, he might have spotted it sooner. At this point, he was getting pretty fed up with this whole black market and money bag mess. He declared he wasn't going to let them get away with it and asked the officer if he could break the spell on the bag. Harewell asked if he was a mage who specialized in anti-magic. Chan confirmed that he was and that he'd just recently gotten certified. He pointed out the obvious disguise spell and asked for permission to dispel it. She gave him the go-ahead. Determined to wreck the criminal's plans, Chan broke the spell with his own 2 hands. Just like that, the trash bag transformed back into a briefcase stuffed with money. The lock was already broken. Aruel picked up the briefcase, gave it a little shake, and noticed it was heavy but made no sound, a sure sign it was packed to the brim. Based on the weight and a quick estimate of the bills, she figured there was nearly 500 million inside that briefcase. Chan's jaw just about hit the floor when he heard that. A little later, they checked the security camera footage. Sure enough, at 3 o'clock that afternoon, a goblin had shown up and left the bag at the store's entrance, casting a strange disguise spell on it. Errol copied the footage onto a flash drive for evidence. Still, Chan thought the whole situation was pretty weird. He wondered why the actual owner didn't just come and get the briefcase themselves. Errol explained it was likely part of their strategy to muddy the waters, since so many different people had shown up all night. That made it much harder to gather any solid evidence. Plus, they were all just regular folks with clean records, making it nearly impossible to trace a direct link back to the black market. Since they were hired through those shady websites, it was super easy for the criminals to cut all ties. She said it was a really common tactic. But Chan brought up another good point. If the instructions were to pick up a bag of money, why not just tell them to grab the trash bag? If the instructions had been more specific, someone would have grabbed it hours ago. He even mentioned that if the manager hadn't told him otherwise, he would have tossed that bag out with the rest of the trash. The criminals got incredibly lucky, leaving 500 million just sitting out like that. If it were up to him, he would never use such a risky method. Chan asked if she could explain everything in more detail later, but then said it wasn't necessary, admitting he was just thinking out loud. However, she explained that it was her duty to update everyone involved on the investigation's progress within 7 days anyway. She told him not to feel awkward about asking. She said she'd have to explain it all anyway, so she'd just do it calmly later. Besides, thanks to Chan and the manager, her own questions about the case were answered, so it was only fair to clear up their doubts too. Then she added that something else had piqued her curiosity. She was talking about the fact that Chan was an anti-magic mage. She remembered the last case with the illegal magic wallet, and how the police had spent days examining it without getting anywhere. It wasn't until they had Chan's testimony and the recordings that the investigation could finally move forward. Even the criminal who had the wallet didn't know exactly how it worked, since he just bought it on the black market. Once they found out Chan was an anti-magic user, a lot of things started to click into place, and she felt a sense of relief. Chan apologized for not telling her sooner, but Isle told him not to worry about it. He'd already been a huge help with the investigation. Usually to break a disguise spell like that, they'd have to call a specialist down to the station, and those guys are almost always booked solid. Thanks to him, the investigation was moving along much more quickly. She thanked him for his help. Chan brushed it off, saying it was nothing special, but mentioned he had a question that wasn't directly related to the case. Chan asked if she was in the detective department. He'd initially thought she was a traffic cop, but she definitely gave off more of a detective vibe. Yuruel explained that she was actually in both departments. On top of that, she was also part of the information management department. The Child and Youth Department, the Criminal Investigation Department, the Cybercrime Department, the Security Department, the Training Department, and the Planning and Security Department, as well as the Equipment Management Department, and several other affiliated divisions. After rattling off the whole list, she asked if he had any other questions. Chan thought to himself that it suddenly made sense why she only slept for 30 minutes a day. He actually started to feel a little sorry for her. The next morning, Chan filled the manager in on everything. She remarked that it was a good thing Officer Eel was there to handle the situation. He also mentioned that the officer said this sort of thing happens a lot in June because black market values tend to drop. When he said that he noticed the manager's expression darkened, he joked that at this rate she was going to turn into a hedgehog from all the stress. Still, the manager had a really bad feeling about this. She couldn't help but wonder why their convenience store of all places was being used as a drop point for illegal deals. To her, this was their workplace, a very special place. What made it all even weirder was that according to her, she'd already taken down those guys once before. Chan was confused, wondering how on earth she could have destroyed the black market. The manager then changed the subject, asking about the money bag. Chan told her he hadn't received any updates yet, but explained that it was a top priority for the investigation and the police would let them know as soon as there was any progress. She asked if that was everything. He explained that it was a bit personal, but they'd asked for his help with the investigation specifically because of his anti-magic abilities. A little later, the manager mentioned that she used to work for the police as a mage, too. She recalled how tough it was to be on a stakeout or investigating for long stretches. Sometimes she'd even doze off in the middle of a shift. Still, she remembered it as a good experience overall. Despite that, she didn't think getting involved in police work was particularly safe. Chan then asked if she would be okay with him taking on that kind of job. The manager clarified, asking if he was talking about taking on work outside the convenience store, which was something they had talked about before. He explained that the amount of outside work was starting to pile up and asked if she'd be bothered by it. He might need to be away for several days at a time working as an anti-magic mage. The manager asked if he had any idea what her routine was like before he showed up. She said she practically lived at the store almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Going home didn't really mean much to her, and she didn't have any friends to go out and chat with either. To break up the monotony, she'd occasionally head to a nearby cafe and ask Yunha to chat for a bit. That's how she spent her days stuck in a repetitive loop, doing the same things over and over. Everything was just dull and boring. She thought her life would be like that forever, right up until Chan appeared. When she found out he was a human from another world with such a special anti-magic ability, she was completely stunned. Probably no one in this world could have ever imagined something like that was even possible. He was always telling her stories about all the wild incidents and accidents he got into, both on and off the clock. And that's what finally changed her routine. For the first time in her life, she was actually enjoying her day-to-day. Thanks to Chan, she was genuinely happy to come back to the store every day. She quickly clarified that he shouldn't misunderstand. It wasn't that she was happy he was suffering. Chan told her he knew what she meant. For all those reasons, she told him she was fine with him taking a side job. Still, she pointed out that they'd been talking for a while and that he really needed to get some rest. Just then, Chan got a message from the pharmaceutical company asking if they could test the product that very day. Later, during the next shift, the manager advised him to handle the meeting as politely as possible, since that was key in this kind of situation. She wished him good luck with everything. The Chihuahua-headed guy was already settled into work, complete with his own laptop, snacks, and a soda. He said he'd paid for 3 hours and intended to make every second count. Chan explained that he had a task to do a bit later and warned him that it might get a little noisy, possibly causing a small disturbance. The Chihuahua-headed guy replied that he didn't have the energy to care because his boss had just ruined an entire month's worth of his work. Now he'd have to spend another month working like a madman, while his boss, who rarely did anything, only made things worse when he tried to help. He was clearly frustrated. Still, he told Chan not to worry about it and to do his work in peace, since he'd be focused on his laptop anyway. Chan thought the poor guy had really been through a lot and felt a bit sorry for him. A short while later, the representative from the pharmaceutical company arrived. She thanked them for being able to reschedule, and to his surprise, it was his good friend, the succubus. A little later, Chan was watching the promotional video for the new experiment. It was actually a step-by-step guide on how to conduct the potion test, with the mascot Kongdaki leading the way. First, the participants were supposed to act like a man and a woman on their very first blind date. They needed to act naturally, without any weird concepts or forced behavior, because the whole point was to see the potion's effectiveness and their genuine reactions. Second, looking up tips for blind dates during the experiment was strictly forbidden. The key to the whole thing was getting people's honest reactions. Last but not least, they should just have fun with the experience and handle everything with care. Chan was totally baffled by the guide and wondered what on earth he was watching. The succubus explained that it was just meant to guide them through the meeting they were about to have. She said she had come up with the whole idea while she was still back at the pharmaceutical company. She mentioned it would be better if she also took the potion because for it to truly work, it technically needed to be ingested by 2 people. In other words, the test required a minimum of 2 participants. Before going any further, the succubus asked for his consent, checking if he was okay with them carrying out the experiment together. Chan happily agreed. In fact, he'd been about to suggest the same thing himself, since his anti-magic constitution meant his contribution could only be physical anyway. The succubus added that she was also curious to see the effects firsthand, especially since she had helped develop it. Before they kicked things off, Chan mentioned the chihuahua-headed guy in the store, who was actually a kobold, and asked if it was okay to proceed with him there. The succubus said she didn't mind at all, but she did wonder if the young man was doing all right. Chan explained that he was just a bit stressed out from work. With that settled, the succubus started explaining how they should take the potion and what kind of scenario they needed to set up. She revealed a beautiful little box holding the potion and mentioned that after Chan's previous feedback was approved. The company's sorceress had perfectly adjusted the formula, completely removing the unwanted side effects. Chan noted that it really did look like a genuine magical potion. Still, the succubus explained that since it wasn't a finished product yet, they couldn't just drink it straight. It had to be mixed into some kind of drink. When Chan asked what kind of situation they should create, the succubus explained that the potion's purpose was to strengthen the feelings between two people who already know they love each other. Even though that wasn't their relationship, they would have to simulate something similar for the experiment to work. Basically, they needed to act like they were in love, or at the very least, like they were a couple. Chan was a bit confused and tried to get a clearer picture. He asked if since they weren't actually in love, they would just have to pretend to be. If that was too much, they should at least pretend they were in a relationship. The succubus confirmed that was the gist of it and apologized if she'd caused any confusion. He then asked if that wouldn't count as a predefined concept, since the video said not to act artificially. The succubus clarified that the video just meant they shouldn't act in a forced or fake way. Since they already knew each other, conducting the experiment within the context of a natural relationship wasn't a problem at all. They could simply carry out the test as if they were on a blind date, and the potion's effect would still show up just fine. The important part was just not to act artificially. Chan realized that's why the video put so much emphasis on being natural. So he said they were ready to begin. They mixed the potion into some mango juice and soda and then drank it down. Chan mentioned that the taste was a little bitter. The succubus agreed that even in the drink, the bitterness was still potent, and they'd need to improve the flavor in the next batch. When he asked how long the effects would last, the succubus explained that, based on the amount he drank, it should last for about an hour and a half, and the effects would start to kick in after approximately 2 minutes. The expected side effects, though not fully confirmed, included disorientation, a feeling similar to being intoxicated, mild dizziness, and a slight fever. There could also be confusion about one's own feelings, especially for someone who had never been in love. Meanwhile, even the kobold was watching intently. When the effect began, Chan and the succubus just sat in silence, staring at each other, not sure what to do. Chan thought to himself that acting natural was easier said than done, but in practice, it was much harder. He thought about taking the initiative, but the kobold threw a piece of popcorn at him, grabbed his laptop, and showed a message on the screen telling him to compliment the succubus by saying she looked beautiful that day. Chan was surprised by the kobold's attitude, who was pretty much pushing him to make a move. When the succubus noticed he was looking off to the side, she asked what he was staring at. Chan replied that it was nothing, just a bug. The moment he said it, he felt a strong wave of nausea and asked if that was a side effect of the potion. The succubus said it probably was and asked if he had just lied. He admitted that he had, even if it was just a small one. Then the succubus explained that it wasn't exactly a side effect. It was a sign that the potion was working. Since the potion was designed to foster positive relationships, telling any lie would cause the user to feel sick. She explained that this wasn't the kind of effect they were aiming for, and that his reaction had been a little stronger than she expected. Chan figured it was probably because the potion was still in its experimental phase. The succubus then asked him to rate his lie on a scale from 1 to 10. Chan glanced over at the kobold and replied that he didn't know, maybe a level 1. The kobold grumbled, asking why Chan was looking at him since he wasn't the one who made up the scale. Chan said he'd rather skip explaining why he lied if that was okay. The succubus said that was fine, and decided to ask a more personal question, mentioning that lately she'd been curious about where he lived. Chan asked why she wanted to know. She replied that it was a common question and an easy conversation starter, and that her mentors had advised her it was a good approach. However, as soon as she said that she started to feel nauseous, right after Chan felt nauseous too, he figured the symptoms must be shared and said it would be better for her to be honest. The succubus said it was fine and that it was nothing serious. Chan thought that at this rate he was going to end up vomiting rainbows. To him, it was hard to consider it a mild side effect because he was genuinely starting to feel unwell. He then stood up and said he would try to do something about the side effects, even suggesting he could give her a massage to help. Just then, the succubus admitted she wanted to visit his house. She explained that she really enjoyed talking with him and felt comfortable when he listened to her. She said she would like to spend the night just talking with him. Chan asked if they couldn't just do that right there. She replied that it wouldn't be enough and suggested they could order some food, have a drink, spend the night watching a movie, and just talk about random things or about work and science. She confessed that she had been thinking about it for the past few days and asked if he would like to do that with her. She explained that she had come over with a lot on her mind. Chan asked her to calm down for a second before she continued. The succubus looked confused and asked what she had just said. He explained that she had basically just invited herself over to his place to watch movies. She was shocked and asked if she had really said that. She hadn't realized what she was saying and began to wonder why she'd said it. At that moment, Chan clearly felt a surge of energy course through his body. The potion was seriously strong. He wasn't entirely sure, but it might even be dangerous. For the first time, he felt genuinely glad to have an anti-magic constitution because it was probably suppressing some of the effect. He apologized for not really responding to what she had said earlier, explaining that he had only interrupted her to try to get rid of the side effects. The succubus replied that it was okay and that thanks to him, she had managed to come back to her senses a bit. She admitted the effect was more intense than she had imagined, and that she'd need to adjust the dosage. She also noted that symptoms could vary between species. She then checked in on him, asking how he was feeling. Chan admitted he was a bit dizzy and nauseous and wondered if they could take a short break before getting back to the experiment. Just then, the Chihuahua piped up, asking if it was already over. He complained that it was just getting good and he wouldn't have time to stick around for part 2. Chan found this odd, reminding him that he'd said he was busy. The Chihuahua just shrugged it off, saying he'd hit a snag in his work and decided to take a break. He then ordered 3 energy drinks, reminding Chan that his time there was already paid for. Chan promised he'd grab the cobalt quickly and be right back. The Chihuahua then turned to the pink-haired girl, telling her to lighten up and have some fun, and questioned why she was sticking so close to that little idiot. The succubus coolly replied that she was there to work, not to relax. The Chihuahua shot back that it didn't look like work to him, sarcastically suggesting they were filming a romance scene. Chan cut in, asking him not to cause trouble with the other customers. The Chihuahua just retorted that it was his business, adding that he'd bought 2 cans, so he'd be drinking the other one. Chan pointed out that there wasn't even a promotion going on, and he should at least take his change. But the Chihuahua just said it was too much of a hassle. Chan couldn't help but wonder if the guy was just using it as an excuse to pay for their drinks, but either way, he really should take his change. The succubus then asked who exactly that Chihuahua was, noting that he seemed a bit rude. Chan explained that he was a regular who always showed up and acted like that. His favorite pastime seemed to be buying things for Chan, while simultaneously insulting him, but Chan assured her that deep down he was a good guy. She asked if many customers like him frequented the store. Chan chuckled and said no, he was definitely one of a kind, but there were plenty of other memorable customers who dropped by from time to time. Then Chan and the succubus started chatting about the different customers he served at the store. Their conversation turned light and easy, filled with curious tales about the people who passed through there daily. After about an hour, the succubus sincerely thanked Chan, telling him he'd put in a great deal of effort during the experiment. Chan humbly replied that it wasn't just him and that they had both worked hard. Still, he admitted he wasn't sure if he had fulfilled his role properly. The succubus quickly assured him that he'd done an excellent job and that thanks to him she'd gotten all the information she needed. This session was mainly focused on analyzing the potion's side effects and symptoms, and she confirmed she had gathered all the results she'd been hoping for. She added that she also really enjoyed hearing his stories about the kindergarten dragon girl and the werewolf driver. Chan said he was just happy to know the experiment was a success. Then the succubus mentioned there was something she was personally curious about. She asked him why he had stopped to listen to her story the first time they met. As she'd mentioned before, the only reason she came back was because of what he'd said to her that day. Back then, she had no one to talk to about her problems, and whenever she tried to bring them up at work, people would just ignore her. Chan had been different. He hadn't just listened to her concerns, he had actively tried to help. That's why she really wanted to know his reasons. Chan explained that he simply wanted to help because he could see how hard she was trying. He admitted that he'd never had dreams as big as hers, nor had he ever been so dedicated to a single job. Ever since becoming an adult, he just drifted between whatever part-time jobs paid the bills. He'd never really had a big goal of his own. Even so, he found her seemingly absurd quest for true love to be really interesting. Seeing how hard she was working, he just felt compelled to help. That's why he told her to keep doing her best, and that he'd support her however he could. The succubus thanked him one last time before she left. Chan then recalled she had mentioned wanting to visit his house, but explained that it was a bit complicated for a few reasons. He said that maybe later on he could give it some more careful thought. Still, they both agreed they would definitely meet again. The next morning, however, Chan was completely exhausted. He figured he must have used up all his energy during the experiment, but he still had 3 long hours left on his shift. He thought maybe more coffee would help, but just then his manager showed up unexpectedly early. She informed him that starting today, he would be working the morning shift. Chan was confused, since he had always worked the night shift. The manager explained that she wasn't officially changing his schedule, but that if anyone were to ask, he was to say he worked in the mornings. Before she could explain any further, a flood of customers suddenly started pouring in, a surprising number of them being couples. Chan found the early morning rush incredibly strange and began to wonder what on earth was going on. One customer approached the counter without buying a thing just to ask if he was the guy from the night shift. Chan replied that he wasn't, that he worked mornings, and asked why he was asking. The customer then showed him a video on his phone. In the clip, an older man was talking about how he had met an exceptionally kind person at that very store. Chan instantly recognized the elderly streamer who had dropped by the other day, the one who'd been eating that giant bowl of food. On his live stream, the man explained that thanks to a very kind young man, he had learned how to order food through an app. He sang Chan's praises and said he would come back to visit him. The manager asked if that wasn't the same man who had given him $500,000. Chan confirmed that it was. The manager then commented that the man was known as a sort of earth deity. Chan was confused and asked if he wasn't a shaman. She explained that it wasn't quite like that. He was a sorcerer specializing in agricultural magic. He helped people in need, and because of that, he earned the nickname of a deity. After working for many years in the fields, he retired and started doing live streams. The manager asked if he had read Chan's fortune. He replied that the man had said he would go through some major events, but in the end, everything would turn into luck and fortune. Chan wanted to know if there was any truth to those words. The manager explained that major events are subjective. For her as a manager, the increase in customer traffic was an excellent thing. For Chan, maybe not so much. He admitted that he had been genuinely thrown by the situation and asked how they had found the store's location. She said they had probably recognized the surroundings in the video. In fact, she herself had been surprised because she sometimes watched the old man's streams. The night before their store had been mentioned in the chat, and viewers had gotten excited to visit and spend money there. Chan then realized that was why she had come in early, and also why she wanted him to say he worked the morning shift. He had never imagined that this simple interaction with the old man would end up like this. So Chan asked what exactly the man did during his live streams. Chan mentioned that the old man had said that eating on a live stream wasn't his main content. The manager replied that from what she usually saw, he did indeed appear to be eating, but that the main content of his broadcasts was shooter games. His favorite weapon was a sniper rifle. Chan was surprised and wondered if someone that age really played that kind of game. The manager explained that he had once said he played because he was living out what he hadn't been able to enjoy in his youth, seizing the opportunity. The manager asked how the meeting the day before had gone, especially the potion experiment. Chan replied that it hadn't been that difficult. Even so, he found himself wondering if that succubus was truly the real deal. The manager asked if it was the same one who had visited the store before her expression, clearly showing her interest. Chan confirmed it was her and asked if it was really necessary to recount what had happened. The manager replied that yes, it was important for the confirmation process. Then she commented that he was truly impressive. Not just for being amazing, but for being extremely resistant. After all, he had been dealing with a succubus even if it hadn't been entirely intentional. She had likely activated a seduction spell. The manager explained that succubi naturally possess a spell that makes people feel drawn to them. This spell can be activated at any moment without preparation, but it depends on a specific condition the succubus must genuinely wish for the person in front of her to like her. In other words, the spell only works when a real feeling of love or affection is involved. Many times it's activated unconsciously, and several succubi don't even realize they have used it. Normally, the affected person falls under the spell in 99% of cases. However, Chan is practically immune to seduction magic. The manager asked if he had truly felt absolutely nothing. He replied that it wasn't exactly like that, but that the situation had been a little different. The succubus had been feeling unwell because of the potion's side effects, and there had also been another person watching everything. He commented that perhaps something had happened by accident because of the potion itself. The manager said she wasn't sure but decided to drop the subject. There was still time before his shift ended and she intended to carry out an inspection in the storage room. At that moment, Hana entered the store. She seemed a little embarrassed when she saw the manager there. But the manager explained that unfortunately Chan was very busy that day and couldn't play. He commented that he had new tasks to perform, something difficult to even explain properly. Basically, he would have to check magical items stored in a place that looked like a dungeon. Hana thought that sounded fun and said she would like to go on an adventure like that. The manager replied that she could work with them since it was a very important job. Then she asked if Hana knew how it worked. The girl answered that she did because it was the kind of job her mother always did when she said she was busy. The manager said that was exactly what they were doing now. She explained that if Hana wanted to help, she could come along and afterward, she could have lots of cookies. Hana agreed in a heartbeat. Before they got started, the manager cast a spell and suited her up in a mini uniform, officially making the girl a part-time employee for one day. A little later, once they were in the storage area, which honestly looked just like a dungeon, Hana was completely amazed by everything around her. Chan asked the manager if it was really safe to bring a little girl into a place like this. The manager explained that she had placed a cleansing spell on Hana's clothes, so there was no need to worry about the environment. Chan clarified that he wasn't worried about dirt, but about the products themselves, which were often unusual magical items. The manager reassured him that the most dangerous items had already been separated. The ones they were inspecting that day were meant for children, so there shouldn't be any major problems. They finally arrived at the room where the children's items were stored. Suddenly, Hana was nearly swallowed by a treasure chest. Chan immediately rushed over to pull her away from the creature. She asked if the chest was dangerous. Chan explained that it wasn't even an ordinary chest, but a mimic. While he was still processing the situation, Hana's attention had already darted to something else, a hero's sword on display. The manager explained it was the sword from the myth of the hero who pulled it from the stone, but she commented that kids these days weren't as familiar with that story. Chan was confused and asked how there could possibly be a mimic in here. He pointed at the chest that had almost devoured Hana and asked if it wasn't actually a mimic. The manager explained that it was nothing more than a children's go-kart designed to look like a mimic. Only then did Chan notice that the object had a brake, an accelerator, and even a steering wheel. The manager then returned to the topic of the sword and the stone, saying the item was usually used for school plays. Hana asked if she could try to pull the sword from the stone, saying she really wanted to try. The manager replied that she could right after Uncle Chan checked to make sure the item was safe. As he approached and analyzed it with his anti-magic ability, Chan noticed that the area around the jewel was fluctuating slightly. However, when he touched it, nothing changed. Maybe the source of the magic wasn't in the jewel itself. He commented that he might need to take the object apart and asked the manager if it was okay, just in case something broke. The manager cheerfully replied that it was fine, and that the insurance would cover any damage. Chan then said he would pull the sword out with Hana. The manager turned off the storage room lights to make the scene more exciting since the sword was supposed to glow. When the two of them pulled it together, there was an intense flash of light. Hana was impressed, saying that the light and sound effects were amazing, but the manager found it strange because the sword itself was also supposed to be glowing, not just the stone. She explained that the stone functioned as a battery charger and that the sword should activate its own effects once removed. Chan commented that it looked like a high-quality toy. The manager explained that about 10 years ago, there was a very famous anime called Hero of Light. Both the sword and the stone were designed with their own batteries and systems to recreate the hero's abilities from the animation. However, it seemed there was some kind of problem with the sword. Chan decided to take a closer look. After carefully analyzing it, he realized the true source was indeed the magic stone. Even so, touching it directly did nothing. He then managed to remove the stone from its compartment. The moment he did, a kind of spooky presence shot out from inside, announcing that it had finally freed itself and was now going to take over the place. Right after that, the spirit disappeared. Chan was shocked and asked what on earth that was. The manager replied that everything had happened so fast that she couldn't explain it either. Hana pointed out that the little stone had fallen to the floor and looked dirty. Chan noticed it was indeed covered with something that looked like coal dust. The manager agreed, saying the strange entity must have left the grime behind. He gently rubbed the stone until it was clean. When he placed it back in its slot, the sword finally began to shine intensely. Even so, Chan commented that it seemed the stone wasn't working perfectly because of the dirt left by the creature. The manager suggested that perhaps the item had just been left unsupervised for too long. She declared the sword inspection finished and moved on to the next item, a magic wand shaped like a spatula. She commented that the toy was extremely popular and that she had bought a bunch of them the previous month. According to her, it was the salt wand of the happy magical chef. Chan was surprised, wondering if she really knew about that show. The manager explained that the idea also came from a recent anime that was super popular with kids. Hana's eyes lit up when she saw the wand. Much like the sword, this toy had several different functions, including a transformation feature. The moment they activated one of its functions, Hana transformed into a little chef. Chan was quite impressed. The manager explained that with this particular type of transformation, toy, it was possible to become the main magical girl, her friend, or even the villain. There were a total of 3 different forms to play with. On top of that, there were other magical functions available, but she had some concerns about the others because of the sheer number of options. She asked Chan if he'd noticed any strange auras or unusual energy. He replied that he hadn't and that everything seemed clean. The manager then suggested they test out the other transformations, asking Hana what she'd like to become next. A little later, Chan started reading the wand's manual before activating the transformation spell for either the villain or the magical girl's friend. Chan was baffled, wondering how any kid could possibly understand that. The manager explained that he could just ignore that part since the instructions were more for show than anything truly necessary. In reality, all you had to do was use the wand pretty much any way you wanted, and the transformation would still work. Even so, Chan couldn't help but wonder if they really needed a magic wand for any of this. Since the manager could use magic without a wand, she explained that she didn't need one because she calculates all the formulas directly in her head. Most beginner mages use a wand, which basically works like a calculator. Once a mage gains enough experience and skill, they might not need one anymore. Still, some carry small wands just in case. So Hana decided she wanted to give it a try. The manager said they'd head into the hallway to test out the transformation. Later, she explained that since Hana already knew the transformation spell, all she needed to do was keep practicing. First, she was going to use the magical girl's friend form on Chan. The manager walked over to Chan and asked if he was tired. He said he wasn't, but admitted he found this whole transformation game a bit strange. He'd never had any nephews, nieces, or cousins, so he didn't really know how it all worked. The manager told him he was being too serious and needed to lighten up. Suddenly, a beam of light struck the manager. Chan quickly asked if she was okay. She confirmed she was fine and explained that she was now in her villain form. Hana said she loved the look, and Chan didn't notice anything strange about her. There was no weird aura. The next transformation was meant for Chan himself. Without missing a beat, Hana used the magical girl's friend transformation, and Chan thought he'd at least have a few seconds to prepare. But after the beam of light hit, he wasn't affected at all. He didn't transform. Chan thought the wand might be broken, but the manager asked if he remembered their conversation about the succubus and why her temptation spell didn't work on him. He remembered that he has an anti-magic constitution. The manager explained to Hana that the wand wasn't broken, it's just that Uncle Chan isn't affected by that kind of spell for a very complicated reason. Hana was disappointed because she thought he would have looked cute as the princess. Chan asked if this princess character looked anything like him. The manager said no, and then showed him a very ugly big-headed doll. Chan thought it was a very good thing he has an anti-magic constitution. The manager explained that she only wanted to turn him into the princess so he could be friends with the magical girl. Hana suggested they could be even better friends if they transformed together, but Chan said they didn't need to do that because they were already friends. The manager agreed, saying that since they work and play together here, they're already friends. Chan commented that the only problem is that they're just slightly older friends. The manager teased that he's not that old. After that, they started playing for real. The manager, still in her villain form, announced that she had captured the princess. She taunted the magical girl's friend, saying that if Hana didn't show her some magic soon, she would lock the princess in a dungeon forever. When Hana used her fire spell, a huge fireball appeared. Chan found this strange because it definitely didn't look like a spell from a child's toy, and he wondered what they were going to do about the fireball heading straight for them. The manager remained silent and focused, simply absorbing all the mana from the fireball until it vanished as if it had never existed. Then she asked Chan to take Hana upstairs to get some items, thanking Hana very much for helping out with work. She told him that for now, they just needed to go upstairs. Hana then asked Chan if the manager was angry. He replied that she wasn't and that she would never be angry with her. It was something else. A little later, outside, Hana was playing with a bubble gun. Meanwhile, Chan noticed that the manager was taking a long time. The problem with the toy must have been pretty serious. It was strange because he hadn't seen any of the weird aura he usually does. Then Hana announced that she'd finished drawing her uncle on a bubble. Chan was impressed that she could draw on bubbles. He said it all looked like fun, but gently asked if she wasn't supposed to be in kindergarten. Hana explained she wasn't going to school that day because her teacher said something very dangerous had appeared near the school. Something really, really dangerous. At that moment, Chan, standing in front of a massive portal, figured he'd probably be working overtime and through his night shift. He noticed some unusual customers showing up. It was already 11 at night and there wasn't a single soul on the street. On top of that, the manager was still inside and seemed incredibly angry. Chan then wondered why she hadn't gone home yet, seeing as her shift had ended more than an hour ago. The manager said she hadn't even noticed the time pass. She explained that she was writing a report on yesterday's magic wand incident to speak directly with the branch that sold the product and with other authorities. She then asked if Chan remembered what she had explained before about magical power. All living beings in their world possess magic, but some have exceptional power. She used Hana as an example. A young, pure-blooded dragon like her can have up to 10,000 magical power. The manager said this amount was on a completely different level. Therefore, any magical product needs to be made with that kind of difference in mind. She explained that ideally a product like a wand should only use a minimal fraction of the user's magical power, something like 1%. A normal fire spell usually requires far less, sometimes only 5, or at most 500 magical power. The issue is that the wand allowed Hana to channel all 10,000 of her points, and that wasn't her fault. It was the wand's fault, which should have had an input limit of almost 0, so it couldn't accept that kind of charge. The manager emphasized that the spell Hana used was only supposed to be a tiny fireball, smaller than a match flame. What happened was a mistake by the magical toy company. She said Hana could have gotten hurt, and Chan too. She remarked that she should have been more careful. Chan admitted that if that had been him, he definitely would have panicked. He remembered how when the magical tool exploded the first time Hana appeared, he had been completely desperate. And yesterday he panicked as well when the fireball flew toward them. But the manager didn't. She handled everything calmly, and because of that, she was able to contain the spell and keep everyone safe. He said it wasn't just yesterday. She's always calm and easy to talk to, and that's why he's able to keep working there. So he asked her not to blame herself so much. The manager replied that he was very kind and didn't need to say that. Just then, Officer Aru entered the convenience store stating she had updates about the money bag case. Before continuing, she wanted to clarify something, asking if Chan was sure he wasn't involved in the case or had any connection to it. Both of them denied it, and Aru said that was fine. She said she would give a summary of the investigation so far, and that they could ask anything at any time. She also noted there are several supervision and security spells in that area. So if anyone related to the investigation showed up, they would know. Then Aru asked if it was all right to count on Chan's cooperation as a mage or an anti-magic specialist, as they needed him to speed up the investigation. Chan said yes, he could help, as long as it didn't interfere with his work at the store. Aru said they also needed a mage and looked over at the manager. The manager indicated that she was willing to cooperate. Aru commented that she had heard the manager was a mage and asked if she had her certificate with her. The manager said she had forgotten it at home. Aru observed that the two of them seemed quite close. The manager confirmed it, but immediately changed the subject. She wanted to know if Aru had managed to obtain the security camera footage and how the review went. She asked if they could watch it as well. Aru said there was no problem, especially since the manager owned the establishment and that they would watch everything from the beginning. Meanwhile, Chan noticed the manager seemed very different from usual. Maybe it was because of her past experience with the police. From a story she had told him before, she used to work as a professional mage some years ago. But Chan still didn't understand why she had suddenly become the owner of a convenience store. Just by analyzing the cameras, the manager commented that the goblin was probably in the hospital now. Chan asked what had happened to him. The manager replied that he had been hospitalized for a very specific reason, and Aru asked her to explain in detail. The manager said that the goblin was responsible for providing the magical energy for the disguise spell on the money bag. She recognized the strange gestures he was making and explained that it was a way of sustaining magic for a specific spell. It was a type of combined spell between two people. What the goblin was doing at that moment was channeling his own magical power to keep the spell active, taking full responsibility for it. The catch, she explained, was that it was a continuous spell. She compared it to a mage firing a magic arrow. If the arrow simply hits its target and disappears, it's considered a single-use spell. But if the mage can still control the arrow after it's been fired, then it's continuous because it doesn't vanish while it's being maintained. And one of the key things about a continuous spell is that it drains magical power the entire time it's active. The manager explained that the goblin cast a continuous disguise spell on the money bag, and then walked out of the store, all while sustaining it with his own magic. In addition to the disguise spell, he also cast a promise spell. But according to her, Chan managed to undo both spells. She then asked if Chan understood the consequences of casting a spell that promises to take full responsibility like the goblin did with the bag. That's when it clicked for Chan what had happened to the poor guy. He was hospitalized for failing to fulfill his magical promise. As a result, his magical power was completely zapped. The manager explained that when a person's magical power is totally exhausted, their very life is put in danger. She also pointed out that the severity of the magical backlash was likely tied to the amount of money that was in the bag. Based on her analysis, the goblin probably wound up in the emergency room the exact moment Chan broke the spell. Chan thought to himself that he never intended to cause anything like that. The manager suggested they check nearby hospitals, figuring that whoever hired the goblin was probably still keeping an eye on him, so their first step was to find where he was admitted. IUL replied that she would handle the verification of the manager's certificate separately at the station so they could proceed with the consultation payment afterward. The manager said that was fine with her. IUL also assured Chan that he would be compensated for breaking the spell. He said she could deposit his payment right along with the managers and that it was no problem at all. I thanked them both very much for their cooperation and stated that we would update them on the investigation as soon as we learned more about the goblin. Later on, Chan asked the manager if she had another job besides the convenience store. She replied that she didn't because doing too many things at once is exhausting. For the time being, she was just the manager. Chan then asked why she had helped so much with their investigation. The manager answered that, for one, they messed with her store. On top of that, she wanted to see the looks on some former colleagues' faces. She didn't go into detail, but she had once been a great mage who worked in several fields and helped the police many times. She figured she might just run into some people from her past. Even though she had forgotten her certificate at home, she wasn't going to give up. Chan commented that she could have just let it go if it was embarrassing. IUL had warned that verifying the certificate might take some time and delay her payment. Even so, the manager said she would never refuse to help. It was a matter of her pride as a mage. Just then, Chan received a message from Yaha saying she would arrive that night with a new delivery and also wanted to talk about something else. The manager said she had no idea what it was about as she hadn't been talking much with Yaha lately. She had just been working too much. Then she asked suspiciously if Chan was hiding something about Yaha again. He said no, insisting that this time he had done nothing and knew nothing. The manager commented that it must be something else then. Suddenly she thought of something and grew worried. She hoped her gut feeling was wrong. Then she pulled up a news video about the massive portal that had appeared in front of the kindergarten. The next day during Chan's shift, when he arrived, he saw the manager feeding Puppy. He asked if he could join their lively conversation, and Puppy replied that he had missed him. The manager commented that it was a good thing Puppy stopped by, otherwise the afternoon would have been incredibly boring. Not many customers had shown up because of the whole portal incident. After watching the news, Chan commented that the situation didn't look good, and asked if this wasn't a rare occurrence. The manager confirmed that it was. Portals almost never appear in that area, which is why there are several tall buildings near where everything happened, making the situation even more dangerous. But 2 days ago, portals started appearing in large numbers, and unexpectedly they've been staying open much longer than usual. The entire city has been following the news since early morning, and because of that, the number of customers dropped. She figured that at night there would probably be some unusual activity because of it. Chan thought that must be why Hana didn't have classes. That was when he noticed that Puppy's tail was injured. Chan asked what had happened to Puppy's tail. The manager said she had tried asking too, but he always dodged the question. Puppy commented that it was a long and very cruel story. He apologized to the manager, but was tight-lipped about the details. Later, when he and Puppy had a moment alone, Chan urged him to open up, admitting he was concerned. He got straight to the point and asked what had happened to his tail. Puppy confessed that he'd gotten into a fight with the Wind Gang and was injured. Chan asked if this was the same pack of dogs that used to bully everyone at the park, wondering if it was about food again. Puppy shook his head. This time he explained he was fighting to protect his territory. But it was different this time. He said the other dogs were drooling and their eyes looked really strange. They were rambling nonsensically and couldn't even walk straight. Then out of nowhere, one of them bit his tail. Still, he didn't back down and kept fighting for his territory. Chan asked why he didn't just run away. Puppy explained that he wanted to become a dog that Hana and the manager could truly rely on. He told Chan about visiting Hana's house where they had a great time playing fetch in the yard. Unfortunately, the stick got lodged high up in a tall tree. Hana couldn't get it down and felt so bad she apologized, saying she should have thrown it better. Puppy mentioned how gentle Hana is and said he was incredibly grateful for the way she looks after him. But at the same time, he felt guilty. He wished he were stronger so she wouldn't have to apologize for something so minor. That's why he decided to change, and his first step was to stand up to those dogs. Chan immediately told him to never do that again. Chan had respected Puppy's decision to live on the streets. He figured it was the right thing to do, since Puppy is a dog and he's a human. It only makes sense that they would want different things in life. Since Puppy seemed happy with his choice, Chan didn't push it. But he drew the line at Puppy, putting himself in danger, especially not for the manager's or Hana's sake. Chan warned that if something serious had happened, the outcome could have been far worse. Puppy insisted he hadn't acted recklessly. He stressed that this time, the other dogs were acting genuinely weird. Chan noted that their behavior sounded a lot like rabies symptoms and asked if that's what it seemed like. He then questioned how many there were and if they were barking loudly. Puppy estimated there were around 12 of them. He said they weren't barking very loudly. In fact, it sounded like their throats were constricted. Chan explained that's a classic symptom of rabies, as infected dogs often have trouble barking loudly. The virus spreads through saliva and can cause them to lose control and lash out at any moment. He also inquired if the gang typically had a strict hierarchy. Puppy confirmed they did, explaining that it was a very organized pack. Just then, Chan had to cut the conversation short because Yunha was calling for him. A moment later, the entire store suddenly began to shake. It was Yuna arriving on her Pegasus and telling them to get ready for a delivery. Yunha asked if Chan had really been awake for 5 days straight, chiding him for surviving on nothing but potions. Chan brushed it off, saying it was too late for that conversation, but did mention that the day's logistics had been particularly demanding. Yuna said she'd brought everything he and the manager had requested. Her eyes then fell on Puppy, and she asked what the cute little thing was, wondering if it was Chan's dog. Chan clarified that Puppy wasn't his, but just a regular visitor, and he asked if she was only now noticing him for the first time. Yunha admitted he was so small she'd completely overlooked him before then asked for his name. At that, Puppy spoke up for himself, announcing that his name was Puppy. It took Yunha a few seconds to process that the dog had just talked, leaving her completely stunned. Chan then filled her in on the whole story. He explained how Puppy had left home to seek freedom and protect his, little peanuts. He went on to say that Puppy lived in the park, but was a frequent visitor to the store and that he'd been running into some trouble lately. Yuna asked if Chan had just been standing by and watching the poor dog struggle through all these hardships. Puppy quickly jumped in to clarify that wasn't true at all, insisting that Chan had helped him a lot and asking her not to be upset with him. Chan remarked that he was usually so careful about these things, wondering aloud why Puppy had spoken to Yunha so freely. Puppy explained that he felt a subtle influence from Pegasus and asked Yuna if she happened to be a spiritual creature. She confirmed that she was. Following that, Puppy cautiously asked if he might be able to get some advice from her. He mentioned that he'd been consulting with the manager and learned that spiritual creatures have special powers distinct from regular magic. He expressed his desire to awaken his own special power as soon as possible and said the manager had suggested he speak with other spiritual creatures to do so. Yunha replied that she wouldn't mind helping, but asked for a small favor in return. First, she wanted to chat with both him and Chan after work. Second, she wanted him to tell her everything he'd talked about with the manager. She explained that she and Chan had to get to work right then, but promised they would get back to the topic shortly. Puppy readily agreed. Meanwhile, Chan commented that business was slow that day, likely due to the recent portal incident. Yunha agreed that was unfortunate, but added that on the bright side, it was the perfect opportunity to deliver something special she'd brought with her. She presented a small jar, filled with water that seemed to be burning from within, explaining that she'd found it inside a portal in the Academy District. When she went inside, she found herself on a large beach, where, for some strange reason, this burning water was buried in the sand. She was curious about what it was, and asked if Chan could use his anti-magic constitution to identify it. Chan carefully set Puppy down on the floor, examined the jar, and asked what it was worth. Yuna figured that since it was so rare, it could go for around 100,000 per milliliter. Chan asked if he could neutralize the area around them for a moment, as he needed to run a few experiments to figure out what the substance was. He promised to explain everything afterward and assured her he would stop immediately if it seemed too dangerous. He opened the jar and let a few drops of the burning water fall right onto his hand. Surprisingly, he didn't feel a thing. After a quick analysis, he announced that the experiment was over. He explained that it wasn't burning water, but rather fire that was burning the water, leaving Yunha quite impressed. Puppy asked what exactly he did, and Chan explained it was a method he learned while getting his anti-magic certification. During his training, he had learned how to isolate and remove specific magical properties, leaving only the ones he wanted. Throughout the tests, he'd noticed that different kinds of magic use up different amounts of magical power. It was the same principle with this liquid. He explained that he figured out both the fire and the water components required magical power. So he started from a hypothetical level of 100 and gradually lowered it, which eliminated the property that was consuming more energy. In the end, all that was left in his hand was the fire, not the water. Yunha remarked how impressive it was, saying he acted with years of experience, and jokingly asked if he was some kind of reincarnated person. Chan told her to stop with the embarrassing comments and change the subject, asking why she had needed him to analyze the substance in the first place. Yuna explained that this substance isn't normally found in the Academy District, and that in fact there shouldn't even be a portal there at all. Usually when a portal opens in that area, it leads to an ocean. A portal located about 10 kilometers to the southeast near the park leads to a volcanic zone, where finding fire that burns water is common. That's why she was so shocked to find the substance in the Academy District and worried it might mean an underwater volcano was about to erupt. To confirm her suspicion, Yunha had asked Chan for his help. After hearing his explanation, she said she was now certain that the portals were resonating with each other. Chan asked if that meant the park portal was also open. Yunha replied that she wasn't sure, but explained that the portal itself wasn't the most dangerous part. The real danger comes from what they cause, starting with the magical beasts that emerge from them. The second danger is when a portal remains uncleared for too long and eventually closes on its own. When a portal closes, someone has to collect its core. Otherwise, natural disasters like severe storms, earthquakes, and hurricanes can occur nearby. Animals might become more aggressive, and plants could start growing in strange ways. She also teased that Chan must have been living in a cave to not know any of this, adding that sometimes it seemed like he wasn't even from their world. Just then, Puppy spoke up with a question of his own. When Yuna mentioned animals getting more violent, he asked if that applied to stray dogs too. He then recounted the whole story of the dogs that attacked him, and how they were much more aggressive than usual. After hearing his story, Yunha decided she needed to go to the park with Puppy and asked if Chan could manage the deliveries by himself. She explained that if this was truly related to the portal, it was her duty to handle it. Besides, Puppy wanted to talk to Pegasus. It was a tricky time to leave, especially after just getting all the missing items delivered, but she felt it was necessary. Chan told her not to worry and to go ahead. Before taking off, Puppy asked them to wait a moment. He brought up the conversation he'd had with Chan about his challenge against the Black Wind faction. He admitted that at the time he thought he was doing it for Chan and Hana, but now he realized he had really done it for himself. He figured he just needed an excuse to find his courage, and that's ultimately how he became stronger. Thanks to Chan's encouragement, he said he had truly changed, and promised to no longer be impatient or greedy, and to follow his path as a true spiritual animal. With that said, he and Yunha departed together. Chan was left alone in the store, surrounded by stacks of product boxes. The next morning his back was killing him, and the manager had to put a pain relief patch on it for him. He remarked that he must have lifted the heavy boxes the wrong way, admitting he hadn't expected to feel this bad. He then joked that maybe old age was finally catching up to him. The manager replied that a healthy back is precious at any age, advising him not to carry so much weight at once next time. Chan noticed she seemed tired too, and asked her why. She asked if she could hold his hand for a moment, and as soon as she did, she said she felt much better. She explained that some kind of magic was likely affecting her physical condition. Since Chan has an anti-magic constitution, simple physical contact solved the problem. The manager explained that as a powerful mage, her senses are incredibly sharp. So whenever something negative involving magic happens nearby, her body instinctively detects it. Thanks to Chan's anti-magic ability, she felt an immediate sense of relief. He playfully asked her not to rub her face on his hand, but added that today was still much better than last night. The previous night shift had been a total disaster with almost no customers. The manager said that she had already expected as much. The morning news had advised people to stay indoors because of the portal. She knew sales would drop, but there wasn't much they could do about it. After his shift, Chan went home to rest, reappearing at his house in his own world. He figured that while his neighborhood was quiet, other areas were probably in chaos. He mused that different worlds were similar in that way, so alike and yet so completely distinct. At least in his world, there were no flying whales or portals suddenly appearing in the sky. With that thought, he decided to get some sleep and stop overthinking everything. On his next shift, he arrived at the store to find the manager chatting with the werewolf. The werewolf was in the middle of explaining what Chan's training was like to obtain the anti-magic certificate. The manager remarked that from the sound of it, the werewolf had been a huge help. He brushed it off, saying it was nothing special, and that Chan's abilities were truly exceptional. When Chan walked in, the werewolf commented that this felt like deja vu. The werewolf mentioned it had been a while, and Chan replied, "Speak of the devil," noting he'd just been thinking about him. The werewolf explained that the manager had just told him about Chan earning his certificate and offered his congratulations. The manager proceeded to tell him the whole story in great detail, taking advantage of the downtime since there were hardly any customers. The werewolf added that he hadn't gotten any fares either, making for a very slow night. He figured the situation was probably linked to the morning news about the portal. The manager mentioned that her magical senses were picking up something strange as well, almost as if a magical battle was happening nearby. She urged Chan not to leave the store. He agreed, and told her not to worry, suggesting she should get some rest. Later, when Chan was alone with the werewolf commented that Chan seemed quite close with the manager. Chan agreed, explaining that he's been learning a great deal from her, especially since he still doesn't know the neighborhood very well. He then asked how the werewolf's driving was going. The werewolf replied that business was slow, but he'd expected it. He even told his partner not to go out to work that day. And by partner, he meant his wife. He then proudly showed Chan a family photo. The little girl in his arms was his granddaughter. Chan remarked that she was adorable and could easily be a model. The werewolf proudly agreed, but mentioned that his son is insistent on her becoming an athlete. Looking closer at the photo, Chan realized the man standing behind the werewolf must be his son, and the woman next to him was likely his daughter-in-law. He apologized for interrupting, but couldn't help but ask where the werewolf's wife was in the picture. The werewolf pointed to the woman right beside him, asking, "Isn't she beautiful?" He added that 60 years had passed and she still looks just like that. It was then that Chan finally understood the woman wasn't a daughter or daughter-in-law, but his actual wife. He found it hard to believe she was over 60 years old. Chan agreed that she was incredibly beautiful, but noted that she looked like a species he'd never seen before. The werewolf admitted that she does indeed belong to a very rare species. Chan quickly added that if it was a sensitive subject, he didn't have to talk about it. But the werewolf insisted, saying that Chan always answers his questions, so it was only fair that he return the favor. He reminded Chan that he'd mentioned being a war veteran before. Back then, he was assigned to a special protection unit. The person he was assigned to protect is now his wife. At the time, she was known simply as a powerful mage, but in reality, she's a spirit. Chan asked why she needed protection. The werewolf admitted he didn't know the exact details, but he was sure it wasn't for any good reason. Chan immediately realized it was a rather obvious question, considering it was wartime. To lighten the mood, he quickly changed the subject, asking how the werewolf had been doing since it had been a while. The werewolf said he'd been busy catching up with old army buddies. They hung out and watched some war movies, which his friends all agreed were completely unrealistic. He remarked that it was unlikely any of the actors were actual veterans. Chan asked if he'd had fun spending time with them. The werewolf said he did. It wasn't bad, he explained, but everything felt like a brand new experience. He was happy and relieved to see his retired friends were living such peaceful lives. At the same time, though, he felt a strange sense of emptiness. He explained that he only started working as a driver out of sheer stubbornness. Even though everyone around him told him not to, he wanted to keep at it because he felt he could still be useful to the world. But after meeting up with his friends, memories from his time in the service came flooding back, and that strange feeling only got stronger. Chan asked if they hadn't kept in touch after the war. The werewolf replied that they hadn't, or at least not really. Once the war ended, they took one last photo together, and then went their separate ways. They made a promise to never contact each other again. That was a direct order from their commander. He said that if they ever wanted a full reunion, they would first have to forget the bad memories. As soldiers, they knew a superior's order was absolute, so they all obeyed. After all, if they got together again, the painful memories would surely resurface. The werewolf commented that the topic was getting a little too heavy and he didn't want to turn the night into a sentimental affair. Even so, Chan asked why he hadn't met with his commander. He said he might be overstepping, but he believes that the last order wasn't just a cold command to him. Everyone in that unit had been incredible. The world is at peace today precisely because of what they accomplished. No one will ever understand the difficult battles they endured. No one can take on that pain for them. Still, Chan was sure that the werewolf's commander went through far more than anyone else. As their superior, he must have carried an even heavier burden. Those bad memories don't just go away. Not just for the soldiers. For the commander, it must be even harder to carry all of that by himself. After hearing about the last order, the commander gave Chan saw it in a different light. To him, that order could mean something like, if one day you manage to forget those awful things, please come find me and tell me how you did it. The werewolf asked if Chan was suggesting the commander might be waiting for them. Chan replied that it was a possibility. He explained that people always say it's easier to deal with hard times when you have someone by your side. Then he quickly apologized in case he had touched a nerve or overstepped his bounds. The werewolf said his commander was an extremely strong person. He had always been a fantastic leader and paid special attention to the rookies. Because he had such a firm image of the man, he had never considered that the commander might also be suffering in his own way. For that reason, he thanked Chan for showing him a new perspective. Suddenly, a new customer stumbled into the store. He was completely drunk and asked for 5 more bottles of soju, claiming he would pay with what he had in his hand. What he was holding was a squirrel, clutching a strange crystal. Chan replied that the store only accepted money. In that instant, the werewolf yanked Chan out of the way as the crystal let loose a massive electric discharge. Not even the man who brought the squirrel seemed to have a clue what was happening. The squirrel started firing bolts of lightning all over the shop. Outside, several other strange animals appeared as if they were being drawn to the electric crystal. Chan said he had to stop that squirrel before the entire store was destroyed. The werewolf grabbed him again and told him to stay calm, asking if Chan had seen what was going on outside. Chan confirmed it was complete chaos. The werewolf said they needed to remain calm and figure out a plan. The squirrel seemed to react aggressively only when it sensed a direct move against it, so they had to act before it could. While analyzing the situation, Chan noticed that the glow from the magical stone was different from usual. The squirrel looked like it was trying to remove the crystal from its own body. Chan told the werewolf to wait, saying they needed to get that stone to analyze it. He stated that the gem had been deliberately planted inside the squirrel, which meant it probably wasn't controlling the lightning by choice. It might be in a frenzy. That stone was unlike any Chan had ever seen. There was likely a specific spell embedded in it. Another electric blast shot across the store and Chan was almost hit. He commented that in this situation it would be impossible to get close to the stone. The werewolf suggested another strategy. He would act as a decoy and give Chan a signal to move in. They needed to execute the plan calmly. The werewolf counted to 3 and charged forward. He ran toward the squirrel, which became agitated and launched another lightning bolt. The werewolf managed to intercept the attack using 3 coins that he threw with pinpoint accuracy. In that instant, Chan seized the opening and tried to get closer. He was about to snatch the squirrel, but it zapped him again, and Chan nearly got fried. The werewolf saved him yet again. Bizarrely, the werewolf seemed to just absorb the electricity. With one powerful punch, he knocked the squirrel out cold. Chan caught it in midair, amazed that such a tiny squirrel could cause so much trouble. He even wondered if this was just a normal day for adventurers like Yuna. The werewolf then noticed the gem on his chest had changed color. Chan tried to pull it from the squirrel's chest, but the moment his fingers made contact, The stone disintegrated into dust because of his anti-magic constitution. He figured the crystal must have already been unstable and about to blow. Someone had clearly planted it in the squirrel's chest on purpose. The werewolf suggested they head to the door and check outside. All of those strange, sharp-toothed deer had vanished. The squirrel woke up a moment later and scurried off as if nothing had happened. The werewolf complimented Chan on a job well done. Chan replied that the werewolf had done all the heavy lifting. He mentioned that blocking a lightning bolt like that was incredible and asked if it was some kind of magic. The werewolf admitted he didn't think Chan would notice, but he had forgotten that Chan wasn't just anybody. He explained that it's what happens when a person concentrates their magical power into their hands. The werewolf explained that magical power isn't just for casting spells. It can be trained for all sorts of uses, like imbuing it into objects, or even into parts of your own body. To demonstrate, he effortlessly plucked a stone from the cobblestone floor with his bare hands. He explained that by focusing magical power to create vibrations, you can pull off moves that would otherwise be physically impossible in a fight. This allows you to dislocate parts of an enemy's body much more easily. Chan was blown away, so that was how the werewolf had managed to deflect that beam earlier, by shielding his hands with magical power and converting the energy into an even stronger counterattack. The werewolf offered that if Chan was interested, he could teach him some techniques for manipulating magical power. Chan replied that he didn't really see himself going around dislocating people's bones anytime soon. Just then, his phone rang. It was a frantic Yunha telling him to get ready immediately because something was coming and they were short on time. The werewolf also sensed a presence approaching and yanked Chan aside. Something smashed right through the shop's door. Standing inside now was an extremely aggressive-looking pigeon. It lunged straight for Chan, but was slammed to the ground in midair by a sudden wave of gravity. It was Yunha who appeared right after frantically asking if Chan was hurt, while checking his hands, eyes, nose, and mouth. She shook him so hard he almost felt worse than before she showed up. The werewolf dryly commented that it looked like Chan was trying to say he was fine. The werewolf introduced himself politely, explaining he was just a frequent customer of the shop. Yunha introduced herself as an A-rank hunter. The werewolf was impressed that someone so young had already achieved that rank, and he asked if she was the one who took care of the metal bird. Yuna confirmed, explaining she had used her weight manipulation magic to ground it. After that, she asked Chan for his help. Using only his magic, he turned the metallic bird back into a normal pigeon, which promptly flew out of the store. Yuna explained that the animals were being warped by the portal. There was a massive horde of them, and some had slipped past the hunters who were trying to contain the situation. They were moving too fast for her to react in time. She noted that judging by the state of the shop, it seemed Chan had been through an ordeal as well. The werewolf explained that a squirrel that shoots lightning had paid them a visit. It was obvious that all sorts of strange things were happening that night. Chan said the only reason he was okay was thanks to the werewolf admitting that everything had been complete chaos. Then Yunha told the werewolf that she needed to speak with Chan about something important, something that couldn't be made public. She reminded him how she had mentioned the portals were resonating with each other, and that the South Park portal would likely open soon, which is exactly what happened. In fact, it wasn't just one portal. Several had appeared in different parts of the city. She explained that the portals in the Academic District and South Forest Park were currently synchronized. The animal hordes, the electric squirrel, and the steel pigeon were all direct results of this synchronization. Chan asked if this meant forest animals were going into one portal, coming out of another, and getting mutated by magic in the process. Yunha confirmed that was exactly what was happening. Besides just teleporting things, the synchronization was causing far more instability than a normal portal. However, she and the other hunters suspected something even more serious, a core portal. The werewolf explained that a core portal is what connects all the individual portals, allowing multiple portals to pop up in the same area. The biggest danger of a core portal is that its connected portals can emerge in totally unexpected locations and in unpredictable forms. If a portal the size of a stadium suddenly appeared in the middle of the city connected to a volcanic zone, it would be an absolute disaster. At that moment, Chan finally grasped how serious the situation was. He said they needed to find the core portal right away. Yuna replied that they were already on it. As soon as she heard Puppy's story about the out-of-control dogs, she began her investigation. She discovered a portal near the park where he lives. She explained that the core portal first connected to the Academic District portal, which was the first one to appear. Then it connected to the South Forest Park portal. Finally, it established a link with the portal near the park where Puppy lives. In other words, the core portal has to be located at the center of the triangle formed by the other portals. Chan realizes this means it must be very close to the store and asks Yunha if there's any way to determine the exact location. Yunha explains that unfortunately, they can only make this kind of rough estimate. Suddenly, the werewolf decides to leave because the spot Yunha indicated is also near his home. He chooses to return to be with his family and make sure everyone is safe that night. Yunha apologizes, saying she didn't mean to make him worry so much. But the werewolf replies that on the contrary, knowing this information in advance is a relief. Yunha even comments that she could call another officer to handle that area instead of him. The werewolf notices that Chan looks very worried and tells him not to be, because he has been preparing well lately and can handle this kind of situation. Yunha teases Chan, asking if he is scared, but he makes it clear that's not the case. The werewolf also comments that the two of them seem quite close. Before leaving, Chan asks him to be very careful and thanks him for all the help he provided that night, promising to repay him someday. The werewolf replies that he will be looking forward to it. Later, mounted on her Pegasus, Yunha informs him that the store's insurance will cover everything that was damaged, so Chan only needs to fix the entrance and leave the rest as is, because other city officers are already dealing with the portals. She tells him not to worry so much. Chan asks if it is really okay for her to share that information with him, since it seems confidential. Yunha asks if he plans on spreading rumors. He assures her that he won't, and that's exactly why she trusts him. She states that they're not strangers, they're friends. Before leaving, she asks him to tell her sister everything later. After explaining everything, Chan comments on how incredible the werewolf's actions were and wonders if humans can also manipulate magical power that way. At that moment, he notices the manager is facing the wall, acting a little strange. She explains that that type of magical control, the technique the wolf mentioned, reminds her of someone from many years ago. Then the manager changes the subject to something more serious and asks if Chan could stay at an inn that night because she cannot send him back home. The teleportation device is broken. Confused, Chan asks for an explanation and the manager begins to tell a story. A long time ago, she collaborated with an escort unit several times. On one of those occasions, they asked if there was any magic capable of detecting a sniper attempting to attack the president from 10 kilometers away. They wanted to know if she could cast such a spell. The sniper's magical shot was prepared with enough force to pierce multiple layers of protection that lasted 24 hours, and it took about 30 minutes to execute with precision. The goal was to capture the sniper within that time frame, preferably alive, to prevent anything similar from happening again. The manager then presented something called high-power detection magic. She also warned them not to use the magic while they were subduing the shooter, because he could predict their movements. In the end, they had to run 10 kilometers to capture him. She was not even sure if the plan would work, but to her surprise, one of the people who took part in the mission later came to thank her personally. She knew that man possessed extraordinary physical strength. The moment they detected the target, they reinforced their own bodies with magic to reach him. While remembering all of this, the manager thinks that perhaps the person Chan encountered might be an old companion of the werewolves, but Chan is not feeling very well. He is still processing the fact that he will not be returning home that night and asks why he is still there. The manager explains that Yunha mentioned a core portal may appear soon, and that this has affected the teleportation device. The calculations and formulas have become completely disorganized, so the device is not functioning. Worried, Chan asks if that means he will be stuck there forever, unable to return home. The manager clarifies that it is not forever. The formulas can be rewritten and registered again. The problem is, re-registering them requires a magical usage certification process that takes about 2 days. This means he'll only be able to return home in 2 days. It's a necessary procedure to prevent theft and fraud involving teleportation magic. Chan understands the logic behind it and normally wouldn't think much of it, but the situation is different now. For days, the incidents caused by the portals haven't stopped him, and he doesn't want to be stuck in the middle of all that chaos. If the werewolf hadn't appeared the night before, he might have even died. The manager promises that no matter what, she'll get him home safely. Chan asks if it's really that obvious that he's desperate. She replies that he doesn't need to hide how he's feeling because it's completely normal to feel that way while literally being in an unknown world. If he weren't worried, that would be strange. She then decides to at least solve the practical side of things and arrange a place for him to sleep. She takes the money a streamer left behind days earlier, explaining that since he didn't return to claim it, the amount now officially belongs to Chan. Then she tells him that if he follows the same sidewalk for about 15 minutes straight ahead, he'll find a decent place to stay the night with good food and a hot shower. Chan thinks the money should have been used to treat the manager to a meal. She jokes and asks if he wants a raise. As she starts pulling more money from her wallet, he asks her to stop being so kind. As he walks toward the inn, he notices that even though it's morning, the streets are practically empty, probably because of the portals. On the way, he gets a call from Professor Descartes, who just wants a quick update and asks Chan to summarize everything because he's short on time. Annoyed, Chan wonders why he even called, but he still gives a summary of the situation. He explains that he took part in an experiment to create a love potion, then ended up getting involved in another case with the police. And now the situation seems even more complicated and will likely take time to resolve. Descartes says that's fine, and that he doesn't need to rush, just to maintain the same pace. Chan thanks him for the advice, but wonders if he's really that busy since this conversation could have been a text. Descartes confirms that he is busy and is even walking while they talk. When Chan asks what kind of job has him traveling so much, he replies that it's confidential. Even so, Chan presses further and asks if it's related to the portals, especially the core portal. Descartes asks how he knew about that, and Chan explains that someone told him what was happening after the incident at the store when several strange animals appeared in a frenzy. Descartes confirms that he is involved. He's part of the temporary core portal countermeasure committee, currently made up of 60 anti-magic specialists, covering an area of roughly 30 kilometers. Chan questions whether 60 people are enough for something of that scale. Descartes admits that they aren't, which is precisely why they're still recruiting. The minimum requirement is at least 3 years of experience with no record of disqualification during that period. He asks if Chan is interested considering his abilities, experience, and circumstances. He could take responsibility for the area around the convenience store, a radius of about 1.5 kilometers. He would receive enough authority to handle emergencies, but he can also refuse if he wishes. Chan asks to confirm if that means if the core portal appears near the store, he would have the authority to act. Descartes explains that he wouldn't recommend something like this if he didn't believe in Chan's capability. Failing at something halfway through is bad enough, but going after something, you'll fail at is even worse. He then asked for his decision. Chan thinks that this is completely different from the tasks he has faced so far. He would have to make quick decisions and act with experience and intelligence, but he still doesn't have enough basic knowledge about this world. Refusing seems like the most sensible choice. Even so, he replies that he needs to sleep on it before deciding and asks if he can give his answer the next day, since he won't be able to return home anyway because of the portals. He also asks if the country offers any kind of support for certified professionals. Descartes confirms that there is support and says he'll immediately send over all the information about the benefits. He sets a deadline of midnight for Chan to make his decision. Soon after the next message Chan receives isn't from Descartes, but from Helena the succubus. She expresses concern about the portal incidents and asks if they can schedule a quick meeting to resolve the potion issue. Chan agrees and asks where they can meet. Later, while in a taxi, Chan crosses a bridge and sees a massive water dragon circling the structure. He's completely stunned by the sight. The driver notices his reaction and asks if this is his first time in the city. Chan confirms, explaining that he came from a very isolated place in the countryside. The driver comments that it's a shame he's visiting during such a chaotic time. If it weren't for the portals, a lot more attractions would be open. He suggests it might be better to come back when things have settled down. Chan agrees, saying that sounds like a good idea. Later at the meeting spot Helena arranged, Chan looks around curiously. The chosen cafe looks more like a museum than a simple coffee shop. The decor is refined and full of artistic details. Shortly after, Helena arrives and apologizes for being late, explaining there was a mix-up with her schedule. Chan says it's no problem since he just got there too. As they chat, he mentions that something has been on his mind lately. Looking at her more closely, he realizes that Helena has a fantastic sense of style. The other times they'd met, she was also dressed elegantly. He compliments the way she dresses. Helena replies that she just picks the first outfit she sees, but Chan comments that since she's so beautiful, anything would look good on her. This gets Helena curious, so she asks what kind of style he would want a hypothetical girlfriend to wear. Chan figures this question might be related to the potion development and answers that it doesn't really matter much to him. He believes that as long as it suits the person, that would be enough. Helena thanks him for his answer and suggests they head inside. Before going in, Chan comments that maybe it would be better for them to start calling each other by their real names. They aren't at the convenience store anymore, so it doesn't make sense for her to keep calling him boss and for him to call her customer. Helena agrees that would be much better. Soon they are seated at a table piled high with sweets. Helena explains that the meeting is directly related to the potion's development. Chan asks if this is also part of the experiment. She confirms it is. After the first test they ran a few days ago, she reported the results to her company, and everyone was satisfied with the effects. Because Chan is an anti-magic specialist, the company decided to expand the project and hire more people to help with development. Everything is progressing very well. Helena mentions that, on behalf of the company, they might need his help with other tasks in the future. Chan replies that he doesn't mind continuing to help with the potion, but he'd prefer to discuss other responsibilities after this project is finished. Helena then explains the next stage. The new potion is an improved version of the one they tested before. It now has greater stability and an added effect that makes a person be honest with themselves. Even though she's the youngest member of the project, she was the one who suggested this improvement after the last meeting. She believes that someone who isn't honest with himself can never be truly honest with others. Her supervisor was very interested in the idea and asked them to test this effect in the next experiment. Chan comments that it's great to see her being recognized at work, since it's not very common for younger people to have their opinions valued. Helena replies that it might have just been luck. He disagrees and asks if she usually improves potions on her own. She confirms that she sometimes does it as a hobby, but only simple things. The current market makes it much easier to get access to materials and techniques. She then asks if Chan needs any magical potions. He replies that he doesn't know much about them, but he would love to see her brew one someday. After that, she asks about the job he had before realizing she always talks a lot about herself, but knows very little about him. Chan explains that these days, his routine is basically just working and sleeping. Before the convenience store, he had another job that required constant business trips. He was always busy, exhausted, and sleep-deprived, and he feels like he wasn't very productive. He adds that it's not a very interesting story, and asks if she's sure she wants to hear it. Helena apologizes for prying, saying she didn't mean to make him uncomfortable. To change the subject, Chan suggests they continue with the experiment. Helena agrees, though she seems a little worried. She explains that this time it will be different. They only need to drink the potion for the effect to activate, unlike the previous version, which had to be mixed into another drink. And so, they begin the test. Later on, Chan finally arrives at his hotel. He has a reservation for 2 nights and 3 days in an executive suite. When he looks up at the tall and imposing building, he's impressed. He realizes he's being put up in a 5-star hotel simply because he's recognized as an anti-magic specialist. He figures that if he gets to save money by staying there, then it's absolutely perfect for him. When a staff member shows him to his room, he's completely blown away. The place is enormous and elegant with sophisticated decor and luxurious details everywhere. The moment he sits on the bed, he realizes it's the most comfortable one he's ever felt in his life. For a second, he even imagines he might oversleep and miss work the next day. Even so, he decides that before going to sleep, he's going to test the potion. Helena had warned him it could be dangerous to use it alone since it's still in an experimental stage. But Chan feels like he really needs it right now. He needs to understand his current situation. He needs to be honest with himself. He knows that from now on, he'll be facing far more dangerous situations. So far, he hasn't shown as much courage as he would like. He recognizes that he wouldn't have passed the anti-magic exam without Yuanha's help. He wouldn't have survived the recent threats without the werewolf. He wouldn't have adapted to this world without the manager's support. That realization really bothers him. After he drinks the potion, something unexpected happens. Suddenly, a child appears in front of him, asking why he looks so scared. Confused, Chan asks who he is. The boy replies that his name is Lee Chan and that he is 9 years old. Then he asks his adult version where they are. The boy looks around the room and comments on how big it is with its tall and luxurious ceiling. He asks if he really lives alone in a place like that. At that moment, Chan realizes he can no longer deny it. That child is him from the past in worn-out clothes sneakers with holes and holding a soccer ball that's almost splitting in half. Back then, he was passionate about soccer and was always asking his mother for a new ball. When he finally got one, it was old and worn out. He was devastated. He cried, complained, and threw a tantrum, but his mother didn't react. She barely moved during those moments. Tired of insisting, he ended up going out to play anyway. The other children made fun of him because of the old ball. The memory still stings. Chan understands that this child version of him can only be here because of the potion. The effect of being honest with himself must have caused this manifestation. As Helena explained, it's still experimental, so they might not even know something like this could happen. He asks little Chan if the other children still pick on him. The boy reacts defensively, asking if his adult self is also going to make fun of him for being poor. Chan replies that it's not like that at all, he just wants to talk. The boy says his mother always told him not to talk to strangers. Trying to ease the tension, Chan jokes that he can pay an hourly consulting fee up front. Little by little, the child starts to relax. He looks around the room and is amazed to discover that there's magic in this world. Chan confirms that yes, the room is full of spells, and even the starry sky on the ceiling is made of magic. The boy looks fascinated and feels a little envious. He wishes he could use magic too, maybe to turn his old ball into a brand new one. But Chan explains that this world isn't made up of only amazing things. There are also frightening things like squirrels that shoot lightning and metal pigeons that attack stores. They're absurd and dangerous situations. Little Chan reacts by saying that sounds like an excuse. If he were really that afraid, he would have quit the job already. Before working there, he'd been unemployed. It wasn't as if he was driven only by professional fulfillment or money. The boy continues pointing out that the real reason he accepted this job was because this world was different from his previous one. In the old world, he felt insignificant. He had worked since his 20s, but it always seemed like he lacked experience or knowledge. He was constantly being pressured by his bosses. He always focused on making money, but he never truly managed to connect with anyone. Even when working hard, he didn't achieve good results. Little by little, he gave up trying. But when he arrived in this new world, something changed inside him. Chan used to live his life trying to meet other people's expectations. But in this world, it wasn't like that. He began to realize that little Chan, his inner child, wasn't simply his past self. He was the only part of him that had managed to endure the difficult and depressing days he had faced. That inner child was the reason he was able to keep moving forward until now. It was a feeling he had forgotten for a long time, but that had recently returned with a vengeance. Chan admitted that, yes, he really did like this place. It was the first time someone had shown interest in his story, even though he believed it was insignificant. It was the first time someone had genuinely thanked him for his help. It was also the first time he hadn't been treated like a stranger. There were people who cheered for him and celebrated his efforts and successes. Because of that, when he compared it to little Chan and his childhood, which he considered the best time of his life, he realized that his current days weren't so bad after all. Even so, he confessed that this was the exact reason he was afraid. He was afraid he wouldn't be able to live up to the expectations of the people who genuinely liked him. Model. He was worried that everything would just end up repeating itself. But little Chan told him it was all up to him, encouraging him to try harder this time around, especially now that he'd met some great friends. If he wasn't going to try for his friends, then who would he be? Chan had to admit he was right. Little Chan said he was heading out and asked if there was anything else Chan wanted to know. Chan just asked him to be nice to their mom. After that, Chan shot a message over to Descartes telling him he'd take the job. Later, when it was time for his shift, he was already at the convenience store. The Chihuahua was there complaining and stressed about work as usual. The manager was sipping a glass of milk that the Chihuahua of all people had bought for her. Even though he was cranky, he'd still bought the milk, telling her she was short and needed to grow. Chan noticed that she didn't seem offended by that kind of comment at all. The manager then mentioned she had spoken with Mr. Chihuahua earlier, and that he seemed to know Chan pretty well. He just explained that he was a customer who dropped by every now and then. Then the manager said she had some good news and some bad news. The good news was that he could clock out peacefully the next day and go back to his own world. The bad news was that she was sensing something really strange connected to the core portal. Because of that, she had already contacted Yunha and asked Chan to cover the shift a little earlier. He agreed without any problem. A bit later, Descartes called to inform him that the registration process was complete, which was surprisingly fast since he'd been told it would take a while. Before stepping out to take the call, Chan warned the Chihuahua to be careful, but he didn't even get a response. During the call, Descartes said he was busy and would just give him the rundown. From that moment on, Chan was officially involved in the incident, operating in his designated area under the authority of the National Police Agency, the Hunters Association, and the Department of Magical Administration. He now had permission to mobilize necessary personnel and explore gates in case of an emergency, if the situation called for it. He had direct authority to eliminate the gates. His designated area covered a 1.5-kilometer radius around the convenience store. He was allowed to use any and all means permitted by law. When asked if he had any questions, Chan wanted to know if the situation was really that serious, like catastrophically so. Descartes confirmed that it was. The committee believed that at the current rate, the portal's natural collapse wasn't far off. It could happen in 7 days at most, and as little as 2. Descartes compared the situation to the day Chan took his test to become an anti-magic specialist. He said that once again Chan needed to achieve the best possible results and handle the problem flawlessly. He wished him good luck and ended the call. Afterwards, Chan pulled up a map to look over the area he was supposed to be monitoring. It was the exact region where Yunha had predicted the core portal would likely appear. Everything pointed to him having to deal with this pretty much on his own. The manager and Yunha were also swamped with their own portal problems. He had no choice but to step up and take responsibility. Suddenly it began to rain. The Chihuahua started complaining, asking why Chan was just standing there. He snapped that it was raining and that this was no time to be slacking off. He told him to grab the umbrellas and set up a nice display in the window to attract customers, demanding that he hurry up. Even under all that pressure, Chan still asked why he didn't just go home, seeing as the portal situation was so chaotic. The Chihuahua retorted that he couldn't leave because he was still buried in work. Chan asked why he didn't just work from home since he looked so exhausted. The Chihuahua explained that he couldn't work from home because his bed would tempt him and he would always end up wanting to lie down for a nap. In any case, he said now that Chan was off his call, he needed to get back to work. But Chan explained that he had been on his phone for another job, his work as an anti-magic specialist. The Chihuahua asked if that meant he was a government employee too and involved in the portal countermeasures. Chan confirmed that, yeah, that was basically the gist of it.